When life gives you lemons, you've got to learn how to make lemonade. Described as a perfect novel, so well told that this could be my thumbnail. Hi everyone, it's me, Jess. I have you precariously balanced on a candle. Let's keep our fingers crossed the camera doesn't fall over. Also, my dogs are eating, so you may hear that noise in the background. I have finally made some decisions about what am I going to read in November, and I just wanted to talk through those choices with you. So thanks so much for being here. If you're new to the channel, welcome. So happy to have you. But if you're watching as a loyal subscriber, thank you so much for coming by my channel, saying hi. I'd love to get to know you a little bit better. That sounds so weird, like I want to get to know you and I'm talking to a camera. But truly would love to get to know you all a little bit better. So say hi in the comments below. There are so many different possibilities for reading, as you all know. I'm going to go back to my wrapped TBR, and I'm going to start out first with that pick. So for those of you who have been around my channel, you'll know that at the end of the year last year, and I'm probably going to do it again this year, I wrapped all of the books that I didn't end up reading from my TBRs over the course of the year, and then had intended to get to those books, because I do find sometimes what happens is you have these books, you put them on your TBR, and then you kind of forget about them. So rather than forget about them, I decided to make a game of it and wrap them up. So I'm gonna read one from my wrapped TBR. We'll see if it happens to be a nonfiction book, if it fits into Nonfiction November. I'm gonna talk about my choices for Nonfiction November. Buddy reads. I have a couple of buddy reads this month. I have books out from the library, which I'm gonna talk about the possibility of maybe reading. So that's what's on the agenda for today. Let's start by unwrapping this, because maybe my TBR will fluctuate as a result. I do this with using random number. I have 14 left, and I think I picked number 5. And I don't know what it is, so I'm really excited to see what it is. Uh-oh. Woo! Oh, interesting. Okay, so this came really highly recommended to me by a family member who lives in the UK. It's called Golden Hill by Frances Spufford. It is the Costa Book Award winner for 2016, and it's kind of funny because that award doesn't exist anymore, although I did make a tag about book awards, which I don't know, it hasn't caught on yet. I'm still hopeful it will catch on, and in that tag, I remember talking about Caleb Azuma Nelson, and I think he won the Costa Award when it was still around. This sounds good. This is about New York City in well, not city, I guess, New York as a small town in 1746. One rainy evening, a charming and handsome young stranger fresh off the boat from England pitches up to a counting house in Golden Hill Street with a suspicious yet compelling proposition. He has an order for £1,000 in his pocket that he wishes to cash, but can he be trusted? So it's about New York in its infancy, a place where a young man with a fast tongue can invent himself afresh, fall in love, and find a world of trouble. I've heard really, really good things about this, so I'm actually quite excited about this. I wasn't expecting this to be on my TBR for November, but it is now, so that is so fun. I hope I can get to it. I do have some ambitious plans, as usual. The words for Nonfiction November are capital, display, web, and fraud. I've really been wanting to read this, and I really did mess up last video, or even the last 2 videos, because I don't know, I got it in my head that this was based on a true story, and then I got in my head that it was nonfiction, and it's not nonfiction. So I'm really cheating here, but I think it's completely appropriate for me to cheat for the prompt for fraud. And I'm only allowing myself this because I'm reading other nonfiction books. If this was the only book that I was reading for Nonfiction November, I wouldn't give myself the liberty. The book that I'm talking about is Picnic at Hanging Rock, which is about a group of schoolgirls who go out for a picnic and they mysteriously disappear. There was this mythology around this book that it was based on a true story, but I think that's all been debunked. So that's a little bit disappointing. I kind of thought it was based on a true story, or I had bought into that propaganda. So I'm still going to read this though, because I've heard good things about it. A couple of people commented on my last 2 videos that they enjoyed it. I think Jennifer Loves Books mentioned that she really enjoyed it. And she also mentioned that there's a different ending or something about an ending online that wasn't published, which makes it more intriguing to me. So thank you for that, Jennifer. Yes, so I am going to read Picnic at Hanging Rock, despite the fact that it's not a nonfiction book, so it doesn't really qualify. Except that I am making it it's a fraudulent claim on my part. So I'm taking that word for the prompt, and I'm doing like a meta interpretation of fraud. You know, when you get lemons, you got to make lemonade. And then I'm buddy reading. This is so exciting. So I think that this could go for the prompt for web, or even maybe the prompt for capital, although it's not about banking per se. Definitely web, because it's a story of a woman who was, I guess, kidnapped from her home kind of in broad daylight. In 1972, her name was Jean McConville. Then from there, Patrick Radden Keefe explores this guerrilla campaign in Ireland throughout the 70s. He refers to it as a violent guerrilla war, a war whose consequences have never been reckoned with. I don't know enough. I read Trespasses by Louise Kennedy at the beginning of this year around the Women's Prize. I've read Milkman by Anna Burns. I just really was interested in this, and I'd heard so many good things about it. Patrick Radden Keefe is the same writer who wrote Empire of Pain, which is all about the opioid crisis in the United States. So he has a really good reputation, and I think a very good reputation for this book. So I'm buddy reading this book with Priscilla over at the Evening Reader, and we have a little schedule planned out. So I think we're going to be successful with this. Is our second attempt at a buddy read, and I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be fascinating, and I feel like I'm going to learn so much. So one thing about reading nonfiction is you just end up learning so much. I've always wanted to know more about kind of the reality of the atmosphere, because in Milkman and in other books that I've read, there is this Big Brother kind of fear propaganda atmosphere, and I guess that's what interests me the most. But I also want to know the history of that period in Ireland. It's convinced me that I really want to go to Ireland someday. I have to save up my money so I can go to Ireland one day. So I'm reading this one with Priscilla. Hi Priscilla, if you're watching. And then I kind of mixed up I had quite a few possibilities in my most recent book haul video for Nonfiction November. And then I went, so on Wednesday, I'm filming this on Friday, and I went on Wednesday to performance by the members of Pussy Riot, or some of the members of Pussy Riot, not all of the members of Pussy Riot. It was really incredible. I posted some footage on my Instagram story, and I'm just gonna include some footage. It really upset me. I thought it was a very powerful performance. I didn't know what to expect, because I knew that Pussy Riot they weren't really a band, and I knew it was promoted as a multimedia show. Sorry guys, my battery ran out. So I was saying that I went to see Pussy Riot, and Maria Alyokhina, I hope I'm saying that correctly, had her book for sale along with the other merch, and I picked it up, and she actually signed it for me. Aww. So I think that this just moved right up to the top of my TBR pile, and I just really want to read it. The performance, I was trying to say, really was very powerful, and it really upset me. It really was telling the story of their protest actions, and then also it was very punk rock. So it did have all these punk rock elements, but it was also telling the story of her and other members of Pussy Riot's imprisonment. It was so intense.
Нет, а той, которая сейчас? Сейчас у вас нет революции. Неужели нет? Белоснежные улыбки, поджарые тела. Вашу историю вы курите, если вы ее выдаете. А как же революция? А как же революция? А как же революция? А как же революция? А как же революция?
now I want to read this, and I guess this would qualify for display because it's the story of the protests, which was definitely a big display, and also it really an encouraging of revolution, rebellion against really imperialist powers. It was very intense. It was very sad what they've been through and what other people are going through. I could go on, but I'm sure I will talk more about it when I read and then wrap up this book. So I don't know. I just didn't even realize what I was getting into when I went to the show on Wednesday, and it just really blew me away. So my plans changed for Nonfiction November. So I'm really hoping that I get to these two. I'm going to read Naked Hanging Rock, and then I have some other buddy reads coming up, and I have a book for my book club. I also just wanted to briefly mention Pet Sematary by Stephen King. For me, I wanted to read this as one of my spooky season books because PJ in The Bee Sting is reading Pet Sematary, and I've never read it before, and it made me really want to read it, so I got a copy, and I talked about that in my last book haul, or I talked about it in Spooky Books. I can't remember now. I've made so many videos this week, but I haven't started it yet, so it has to go on my November TBR. I'm really excited to read Pet Sematary. I've already started a couple of these books. I have a buddy read again with Lorrie. We're going to read Matrix by Lauren Groff. I know that she has a new book out, Vaster Wilds, but Lorrie had this one on her shelf, so we've started with this one. I know this is about the life of Marie de France. So yeah, I guess it's imagined a story of Marie de France because almost nothing is known about this pioneering poet except what she tells us with a self-assertion unusual for her time and gender. She was probably writing in England, though she came from northern France. So Groff takes a few hints and ideas and fills in all of the gaps in this fictional story about her life as a visionary leader, queer lover, writer, and mother, or matrix to a thriving community of women. So I've only just started this. I'm like literally just at the beginning of this, but I haven't read any Lauren Groff yet. And I'd heard a lot of really good things about this over the last year. I do really want to read The Vaster Wilds, but we just decided that we would read this one because we had it on well, I didn't have it on my shelf. Lorrie had it on her shelf. I had to go out and buy it. But I'm really interested in it, and I've heard such good things. So excited to read this with Lorrie. Hope it holds up to the hype. Speaking of holding up to the hype, our book club this month is reading Study for Obedience by Sarah Bernstein. Bernstein is nominated, this book is shortlisted for the Giller Prize, and it's shortlisted for the Booker Prize, and it's a thin little, less than 200 pages. It tells the story of a woman, an unnamed narrator, who returns to a remote northern town or village where her older brother lives because she agrees to go and take care of him. The idea is that her family came from this town and historically they were persecuted. So I don't know. I've literally read 20 pages, so I don't really know yet much more than that. I think animals are mysteriously dying as well, so I'm not sure what part that plays in the telling of the story, but I just wanted to be able to weigh in, and our book club was deciding between this and a couple of other books, and I feel like I'm okay with the decision that ended up being made. And I have to read it for next week because we have a meeting next week, so I'm sure I'll be able to, but it's getting read for sure, and sooner rather than later. And then I was at the library. I'm going to talk about my library finds in just a minute. Oh, before I forget, before I get to that, I'm going to be reading Stoner, which I'm very excited because this is a buddy read with Scott and Gemma. I'll leave their channels linked down below if you don't already know them. And this was on 10 of the classics that I wanted to read in 2023. I'm doing pretty good with that list so far. So very excited to read this. I don't know how enthusiastic the other two are, but this is described by the New York Times as a perfect novel, so well told and beautifully written, so deeply moving that it takes your breath away. I'm down if that's the case. It's about a man who lives a very quiet life, didn't really make a big mark, I don't think, on the world. It uncovers a story of universal value. Stoner tells of the conflicts, defeats, and victories of the human race that pass unrecorded by history and reclaims the significance of an individual life. And I really am interested in that idea because I did finish Middlemarch not too long ago, and Middlemarch kind of has the same message. That's the small decisions that we make and the small things that we do with our small lives that make up humanity. So I'm okay. I really like this idea, especially I think having lived a lot of my life and knowing that, you know, I'm not going to make a huge impact on the world. So, but I think it's supposed to be very sad as well. Really looking forward to it. I've heard it's fantastic. We'll find out. I hope Jem and Scott don't DM a DNF. I don't think they will because we're reading it as a buddy read. So did say I've been to the library, and when you go to the library or when your holds come into the library, it also can throw a little bit of a wrench in any kind of reading plans that you have. One of the books that I picked up that I just saw there in the library, I do think the cover is beautiful, so that probably influenced me, but it was just calling out to me. One of the women in my book club mentioned that she was reading it and that it was very good. And I just thought, I want to read that book. So I started it already. I'm about 100 pages in. It's about a woman who's an author, but she's not the most successful. I think she has one novel that was successful. So her name is Dora Frenhofer. It says a once successful but now aging and embittered novelist. And she knows that her mind is going. So, and it's written in an interesting way. It writes from different perspectives of different characters in her life. So members of her family. And then I just read a section that was about a man who she crossed paths with but wasn't actually related to her. And then it has these diary entries. These stories are supposed to come together to explain her life and how her life has unfolded, but I'm not far enough in to know exactly what's going on just yet. I did talk about this book in the 13 books to read for fall because it was mentioned in the Globe and Mail, or actually I think it was actually the summer list from the Globe and Mail. I'll leave the video linked in the description box below. But apparently there's an unforeseen twist later in the book. So I'll report back. So far it's very well written. It's very good so far. I'm actually really enjoying the writing. I'm really enjoying the story. It feels a little bit like distinct stories, as in short stories, because each chapter is devoted to a different character and they have very different experiences that are told on the page in those chapters. So I'm curious to see how it's all going to come together, but I'm really glad I picked it up because it's super interesting so far. I'm enjoying it. And then I have this pile of possibilities from the library. I know I'm not going to get to all of them, but I'm actually really excited about a lot of these that came in. So this is my group of books that I got from the library. I don't think I'm going to get to this one, All the Color in the World, at least not before the announcement is made about the winner of the Giller Prize, but this was shortlisted for the Giller Prize. I did talk about it in the video that I made. I mean, it has these tiny sort of short chapters, so it's a possibility that I might pick it up and dip into it and then get hooked into the story, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure. We'll see if I get to it. I am homeless if this is not my home. Making all those videos has really influenced me to read these other books that I probably wouldn't have noticed before because I wasn't the type of person to necessarily read those recommendations. But ever since I started my booktube channel, I started looking at those lists. So this sounds fascinating to me. I really want to read it. I talked about it in the Globe and Mails. I think this was on the summer list. And this is, I think, it's a ghost story set in the 19th and 21st centuries. A teacher visiting his dying mother in the Bronx, a mysterious journal from the 19th century stolen from a boarding house, a therapy clown, and an assassin, both presumed dead, but perhaps not dead after all. Just sounds really odd and interesting, but I think it also deals with racism, if I'm not mistaken. We shall have to find out, but it has a ghost. I know that much. And same thing for this, Jenny Erpenbeck's Kairos. This is about a woman who has a relationship with an older man. I know that for sure. It tells the story of the romance begun in East Berlin at the end of the 1980s, which sounds like an interesting setting and era. It does tell the story of a 19-year-old Katharina who meets by chance a married writer in his 50s named Hans. And it's about their long-running relationship. I don't know if I'm going to get to these. I might have to renew some of them. Might have to return some of them. We'll see. And then I was still dying to get to another Samanta Schweblin, and because I had talked about her other book, Little Eyes, in the spooky books video that I made, and then I was in the library and there was this book, 7 Empty Houses, and I was like, now I want to read this one, or maybe I'll read this one instead. Here's the description. The 7 houses in these 7 stories. So these are stories. 7 houses in these 7 stories are strange. A person is missing, or a truth, or memory. Some rooms are enticing, some unmoored, others empty. But in Samanta Schweblin's tense, visionary tales, something always creeps back inside. A ghost, a fight, trespassers. I didn't know that this was short stories, which is great because it fits in with my goal of reading more short stories. So maybe I will dip in and out of this. And then I also couldn't resist because Jhumpa Lahiri's Roman Stories was in the library, and I thought, what? No one's taking this out of the library? Okay, I'm taking it out of the library. I talked about it in the list of books to read from the Globe and Mail for fall. She writes short stories that are connected to Rome. So they sound really good. She's a great writer, one of my favorites. I'm looking forward to dipping in and out of this one as well, potentially. It's my little library haul, and we'll see if I get to any of those in November. I mean, realistically, probably maybe 1 or 2 others. We'll see. One of my other books, not a buddy read, might be superseded. We'll see. We'll see what ends up happening in November. But either way, I'm planning to get lots of reading done, and I'm planning to have a lot of fun reading with some other folks, which is exciting. Let me know what you're reading in the comments below. Let me know if you've seen anything fantastic at your library lately, and if you're reading anything from the shortlist for the Giller Prize, let me know in the comments below. I'll see you in the next video. Bye, everyone. I can't believe 2023 is going to be over soon. How many more books can I read before the end of the year? That tag's coming up. Milkman by Sarah Burns. Yes. Oh no, Anna Burns. Before it was, what's the right word? Before its demise? No, that sounds really bad, but before the Costa, I think the Costa Book Award is no longer, so before the very diverse experiences, I don't know what I'm talking about. Hang on.